before I introduce the guests, I want you to be thinking about the questions you're going to ask. So the topic I suggested was, what does an architect need to know about the construction industry? And this whole kind of seminar idea came from discussions in the college about fostering leadership among our students. So we're going to have a fairly concise talk, and then we'll have some question and answer period. So you need a question. Got it? Now, let me introduce our guest today is Jim Thompson. Jim is class of '68. Come on, don't you do whoop or something, you know? We got to keep up the traditions here, Jim.
8 o'clock on Monday morning, it's a tough class.
He's a distinguished alumni of the college, has run construction companies for many, many years, very successful, and he's extremely dedicated to the university and the college, and is back here frequently. So he's been very kind to be here at 8 in the morning to talk to you guys about leadership, about the construction industry, about architecture, the relationship between architects and construction. Now, before he starts, I want to acknowledge, Harold Adams in the back here, who is another distinguished former student, class of 61. Okay. Woo. Yeah. So you've really got a great opportunity to talk to some of the people who made this college what it is, sealed the reputation of it as being a top architecture program and construction program in the country. So let's give a round of applause to Jim.
Howdy.
Howdy.
All right. I've talked to some of you already from Leary, Texas, up near Texarkana, and Mexico, and San Antonio. I'm from Kaufman, which is east of Dallas. I came down last night. But recently, and I want y'all to talk to me if you have a question or something you want to say, or respond while I'm talking. But recently I heard a speaker was talking to kids your age, and he said, I'm not going to preach to you, I'm not going to lecture to you. I'm going to tell you the things that I believe in and the things that I've experienced in life, and I want you to listen, because here's the thing. I've been 19 and you ain't never been 69, okay? I made 69 yesterday, and had a good birthday with my family, but 50 years ago, I was a 19-year-old student sitting right there where you guys are, okay? And I know what it's like. I didn't know very much about architecture or construction or engineering. I started off in petroleum engineering, but got smart and changed over to architectural construction. But this was the beginning of my sophomore year, the same thing y'all are going through right now, but the last semester I had DS'd my first semester as a freshman, and I thought that, well, this is real easy, and I started messing around and didn't do real well, and I had a couple conversations with my dad, and I called him one day and I said, Dad, I think I flunked my calculus test. And he said, son, that's being real negative, be positive. And I told him, Dad, I'm positive I flunked my calculus test. I don't know if you've had those conversations yet. I have 3 sons, 2 of them graduated from A&M and through this construction science program here in the college. And we had a few conversations like that. But speaking of being positive, I know you all know who Christopher Columbus was. Even grade school kids know that. But I want to tell you a story that you probably don't know about him. After he discovered the Americas, actually in the Bahamas and that area, and Haiti and Dominican Republic, he went back to Spain. They had financed him. And he was sitting around with a bunch of sailors, some of them admirers of him, and some of them a little bit jealous and envious of what he had done. And one of them said, any one of us could have done the same thing you did. So somehow he procured an egg, and he challenged any of them to make the egg stand on its end, okay? And they all tried and failed. And he took it and set it on the table. And one of the guys, if not the same one, said, well, any one of us could have done that. And he said, yes, if only you had known how. Now, there's a lot of things that you're learning, your professors are trying to teach you, and you may say, well, that was real easy. But until you were taught it, until you were showed it, it wasn't that easy and you didn't know about it. So think about that. The lessons that you'll learn here in the college and your experiences at A&M, some things will seem impossible. To the guys who were sitting there, it was impossible to make the egg stand on its end. But actually, it was very easy, wasn't it? Once you learn, I'm sure you've done some things in life, and once you learned how to do them, well, that was easy. I'll give you an example in my life. I got married, graduated, got commissioned all on the same weekend at Texas A&M, and had to report to Randolph Air Force Base on Monday. This was a Saturday night. We spent our honeymoon in Caldwell, Texas. I'm still making up for that 47 years later. But we started into pilot training right away, and I went through the first 2 airplanes. It takes 6 months takes a year to get through Air Force pilot training. And I started then in T-38 training, and that's the white supersonic jet that's still flying around. The astronauts fly it, but it's still training our pilots in the Air Force. And my first ride in the T-38, we pulled out on a runway, and the instructor was flying it, and of course, because I didn't know how. And he put it in afterburner, and we took off, and it slammed me against the seat. And about the end of the runway, we were 300 knots, and he kept the burners lit, and we got to 30,000 feet, probably in about 30 or 40 seconds. At one time, this airplane held the record to get to 30,000 feet. And then he wrote his name in the sky and tried to make me throw up and do all that stuff. But as I was flying or riding around with him, I got to thinking, you know what? I ain't never going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be. I was 10 miles behind the airplane, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to make it. You know, I'm not going to be able to make the egg stand on its end. And yet, we flew 2 and 3 times a day for the next 6 months. And slowly but surely, I caught up with the airplane. And then I got ahead of the airplane about 10 miles. And that's my way of saying, any pilot that you fly with, make sure he's way ahead of the airplane, okay? So when things happen. But it took a while, but after... And people talk to me, how do you ever learn how to fly jets? I said, it's not that hard. It's pretty easy once you learn how. Everything is, but you got to stay with it and never give up. I felt like I was doomed when I took that first ride, but I stayed with it and eventually got it, okay? So do the same thing in your career. You're eventually going to learn how to design buildings. You're just starting your second year at A&M. I know you don't feel like you know very much, and you're correct, you don't, but you're going to learn. And you're going to get out of here, and then you get more training with an architectural firm, like Mr. Adams ran RTKL for many, many years, and you're going to learn how to design buildings. And they're all going to get built, the ones that the contractors start. They'll all get built, but they won't all be profitable, and they won't all get done on time. And they may not be profitable not only for the contractor, but you as the architect as well, or the firm you're working for. Recently, I participated in one of your graduate students who came out of the construction science program. She's working on a master's. She did a professional paper, and the topic was the job from hell. And she came up with a scenario of this project, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. And so she interviewed a bunch of us in the industry, presidents of companies, vice presidents, CEOs who were in charge of construction companies, and asked them individually, okay, here's the scenario, what would you have done here, and what would you do here? And she made a very nice thick paper out of that about the different styles of leadership. I want to tell you about, and you're going to have a chance in your career to go through probably more than one job from hell. Harold, you probably had a few in your long career. It's going to happen, and that's going to be your test, okay? Everything is easy when everything goes well. Anybody can do that, okay? I want to tell you about a job from hell that I know about. Many years ago, a young project manager with about 6 years of experience, was put in charge of an 18-story building. And I'm going to give you a few bullet points of what happened on that project, and at the end I'm going to ask you questions, so listen up. We were preparing the site. I don't know if you've heard about clearing and grubbing, but when you go out to a site, you take off with a bulldozer or some other type of equipment, get all the grass and the roots and the trees and all the junk out of the way so your surveyors can go out there and put stakes in the ground and find out where the building goes. Okay, does that make sense? And so we were doing that with a dozer and also a paddle wheel, one of those deals that picks up the dirt and then drives over here and unloads it, and it makes a nice pile, and he drives up and he drops the dirt off and he drives back down the other side. Okay, we were didn't have our fence up yet, and every day about quitting time, 3 kids would come over with motorbikes, dirt bikes, and go up that hill and back down the other side. They were having a ball. We would run them off and they would come back the next day. And one day late, I was in the trailer with my project engineer, and they didn't think we were there, and we heard them. And we started out there to run them off, and before we could, we heard some screaming and yelling, and what had happened, we had started getting rid of that dirt, and the downside of that hill wasn't there anymore. So when the 3 dirt bikes came up there, 2 of them stopped in time, the other one went over, about a 20-foot drop. And he was hurting real bad. He had a broken leg and a broken arm, as it turns out. We got him some first aid. We got him to the hospital, told his buddies, go find his mom and dad, tell them what happened. And that's called an attractive nuisance. If any of your parents were attorneys, you may have heard that term. As a contractor, we were liable for that, okay, because we didn't have our fence up, we didn't have signs up. But fortunately, the mom and dad came to me the next day and thanked me for taking care of their son, getting him to the hospital, and actually apologized for him trespassing on our property. But it doesn't always work out that good. We just started drilling the piers, and it was a trapezoidal building, okay? And we started over here and worked our way around, and we got over to here and took a measurement. It was supposed to be about 70 feet, and it was about 66 feet. And we said, what in the world happened? And you know about piers, you drill holes in the ground and put rebar and dump concrete in them, okay? That's what holds the building up. And come to find out, there was a mistake on the architect's drawings, and we didn't catch it. And you can't pull concrete out of the ground. You have to drill another pier right beside it, put a pier cap on top, and then you set your columns. It's very expensive. The architect made the mistake, the contractor didn't find it, and the owner said, you should have found it, okay? So we ate that. We lost money because we didn't catch the mistake. At that point in time, during this project, there was a concrete shortage. Instead of pouring during the daytime, we had to pour at night between 2 and 3 in the morning so we could get enough concrete to pour each floor. It's about 400 or 500 yards of concrete. So we worked overtime, we worked long hours, we spent a lot of money. The men, you have to pay them more, of course, when they work at night. And there was a labor shortage as well. So we had a lot of issues that were causing us scheduling problems and costing us money. Things are starting to go downhill. The architect, and this is going to happen to you, I'm sure it's happened to Mr. Adams, the owner didn't give the architect enough time to finish their drawings. They were only about 75% complete. And you can do some projects like that if everybody starts off working with each other, but that's not the way. This was a hard bid job. They were supposed to be complete. So we were out there trying to build a project with not all the information available to us, okay? Which means we were having to send RFIs, requests for information, basically, hey, what did you mean here? Why isn't there something drawn here? Constant communication, needing quick answers, and we weren't getting them. They were coming slow. The project lasted 15 months. The project manager went through 3 superintendents, 2 project engineers, 2 field office managers, and a couple of office engineers. A lot of turnover. One guy had a nervous breakdown and left the job. Some of them were fired. Some of them quit. They just gave up. One particular lady was my field office manager. She was going through a divorce. estranged from her husband. He was bothering her. She brought me a loaded pistol and said, would you keep this for me? I think I'm going to shoot him if I have the pistol. I said, okay, fine. About 3 months later, she wasn't doing a very good job for whatever reason, and I had to let her go, and she was cleaning out our office. I went back to my office in the trailer, and she got mad, of course, because she lost her job. She came storming down there and said, give me my pistol, which I handed it to her. And about the time I let go of it, I thought, Fortunately, she didn't blow my head off. There were a couple of disgruntled laborers that the superintendent was trying to fire, and I heard a big commotion, people screaming and hollering outside the trailer. I went outside, and these two guys were getting into it with the superintendent, and I told them to get off the job and come back in 2 or 3 hours when they could be polite, and I'd get them their last check. And they took off. And they came back a couple hours later and were very polite, and I gave them their check and went on. 3 or 4 weeks later, they were arrested, convicted, and went to death row for murdering and raping a couple. I felt very fortunate that I didn't get involved too much with those guys because we were in the middle of it with them. Separated a fist fight on the 14th floor of the building between the labor foreman and the carpenter foreman about to throw each other off the top of the building. The carpenter foreman was later sent to prison for burning a building down to get insurance money. Now, contractors are not all like this. This is the job from hell, remember that. They're not all exactly like this. The owner was slow in making decisions. He was slow in paying us. And I'll tell you, you will be in a position to approve contractors' pay requests. That's their invoice when they need to be paid. We wait 30 days to bill, and then the owner has 30 days to pay us. So there's 60 days that he's ahead of us all the time, okay? Your job as an architect is to get that pay request, look it over, make sure it's okay, go out to the job site, confirm it, sign it, and move it upstream to the owner so that we can get paid. If we don't get paid, our subs don't get paid, things don't get done. It's very important that you get involved with that. Halfway through the project, the managing owner, partner of the real estate company that owned the building died. And there was a lot of verbal deals that we made with him that were never honored, of course, because nobody knew anything about him except us and him. We lost money there. There was a big concrete pour planned for the middle of the night, and late in the afternoon the crane operator quit. And you know the tower cranes, you've seen them around, they rotate like this, they're vertical, they hook to the buildings. We had a tower crane, we had no crane operator. So the project manager, needing to get the troweling machines and buggies and other things up on top of the building, and no one to do it, but him and the project engineer were still on the job late in the evening. He crawls up in the tower crane and had been up there before looking at the controls. They're kind of like joysticks. And operated the crane, talked to the project engineer down on the ground with a walkie-talkie, got the stuff up. Don't ever do that. The project manager is looking out the window of the building with about 2 months, maybe a month ago before it's finished, at a big lake that we had built, about 8-10 foot deep water, about a couple of acres, and all of a sudden a vortex starts like in your tub. All the water drains out of this lake into some underground, unknown underground cavern that we didn't know about. We had to put a concrete bottom in that lake. This is probably built on an old Indian burial ground, I'm sure, for all of these things happening to us. But vandals, glass has sometimes the coating is inside it, sometimes it's outside. The coating was on the inside of the building, a tinted coating, and some knuckleheads put a bunch of, like IKEA car, they scratched about 50% of the glass, about $500,000 worth of damage, 2 months before we were supposed to finish. And the original estimate was a little short. It didn't have everything included in it. The estimator in the company didn't get everything included. Bottom line, the general contractor lost $500,000 and finished 30 days late. Now here's the question. Did the project manager get fired or did he get promoted? How many think he got fired? How many think he got promoted? Got a few promotions, some of you are not sure. Well, he got promoted because the owner of the company realized that most of these crazy things that happened weren't under his control. He stayed there the entire time when everybody else quit, got fired, ran off, whatever, and stayed on the job and got it done. And the owner knew he could trust him from then on with anything, no matter how bad it got. So what are the lessons learned? Remember, we talked about before, don't ever give up. I don't care how bad it gets or how bad you feel or how much you want to quit and go home. Don't do it. It's an important part of your career that will pay off for you. And the other thing, obviously, you probably were thinking, you need to hire better people. Yes. Whether you're an architectural firm or a contractor or an engineering firm, make sure you hire and train, motivate, and retain good people, okay? They're invaluable, instead of the ones who give up on you when things get tough. Well, you're going to be in a position one of these days, and it won't be very long, to help prevent some of these things from happening to contractors. My point being, I want you to know what goes on the other side, okay? The dark side, the construction side, and why sometimes when you meet some contractors, eventually, if they have an attitude, they may be going through this job from hell that you don't even know all the issues that are going on. So try to help each other out. I've got an intern from Texas A&M. He's a junior in construction science. And I asked him, what do you want to tell the sophomores that I'm going to be talking to about what they ought to know about construction? And I'm going to pick a few things out of the letter. He sent me an email yesterday. He said, architects interact with project managers literally every day. So what does that tell you? You got to be a good communicator, okay? You got to want to help the project. We contractors can make life miserable for everyone, including architects. And you can do the same. Or we both can decide how we're going to help each other get this job done as a team. And more often than not, that's the way it is. But a long time ago, we fought a little more than we do now. Second thing, architects and project engineers need to establish a professional friendship to maintain composure throughout projects when problems occur. Now this young man is just 1 year older than you guys, but he's spent 2 summers with us, and now he's spending a whole semester with us. And he's already realizing that you have to establish relationships with people, built on trust, okay? You got to help each other out to get things done. Architects need to communicate thoroughly when a change is made on a set of drawings to ensure that everyone is on the same page, not to make a pun. Well, the reason he said that is because sometimes, every once in a while, you get in a hurry and you give us, there's a change the owner wants, and you give us another drawing, and it's just like the one we've got. There's no clouds on it, there's no notations, there's no date on it, and we either know that it's a change, or maybe we don't even realize it, and we don't find the changes that you made, and we build it wrong, okay? So when you make changes, make sure they're easily figured out. All right, a couple more things. Make sure that you coordinate, if you have time, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing and structural drawings. The mechanical and electrical engineers will be under you as a structural engineer as well, as you'll be the architect. And they have their own drawings. Make sure that when the drawings go to the contractor, you put the bathroom over here and the mechanical engineer puts it over here. No good, okay? Coordinate drawings, that's a big deal. And I told you about the pay request. I had that written down twice because that's probably one of the most important things that you'll do for the contractor. The other thing is be careful about the things that you specify, the materials and products that you want on your project, because we want to get them for you. We want to find them and put them in the project. But when you select something that there's only one source for, okay, it makes it hard for us to get it, which that's fine as long as we have enough time. But you're going to find out that the vendors and the salesmen and the people that work for these companies that have products, light fixtures, carpet, wall covering, all these things that you're going to be selecting, they fib a little bit about the delivery dates, okay? And they'll tell you, oh yeah, we can get that stuff in 6 weeks. And what they really meant is maybe 16 weeks. That causes terrific scheduling problems on the job, as you probably could figure out. Well, you're going to become proficient at competent as architects and as designers. And some of you are going to be designers, some of you are going to be production architects, some of you are going to be entrepreneurs that own your own company. But you're not going to be successful unless you have your internal compass pointing in the right direction. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but unless you have your principles well established, okay, here and here, and the values that support them, moral and ethical principles, you're not going to be successful. You're going to be found out. Your talent is not going to make the difference in your success out there. The mission statement of Texas A&M is fairly long, but I like to summarize it in about 5 words, and that's to develop leaders of character. And I know all of you aren't going to be in charge of everything as the leader, but you need to be as a follower, and we need followers just as much as we need leaders. You need to recognize good leadership, okay? You need to go to work for companies who have people that have principles and values and have that internal compass pointing in the right direction. And don't worry about the talent and their experience and all the rest of it. Make sure that they've got that right. You know, the values that Texas A&M adopted about 10 years ago, I think we were practicing them for the last 150 years. Respect, excellence, leadership, loyalty, integrity, selfless service. There's 6 of them. Think about those and how you can apply them to your lives, and also what your parents and your grandparents taught you, the values that you've grown up with. Put them together with those. I don't see any, well, we have one Corps cadet out there. They have their set of values that they've adopted. Some of them are the same in the university, but courage, honor, integrity, selfless service, discipline. I get them right? Okay? They're really important. This is who you are. This determines who you are, what you believe in. If you want to be successful and win over and over and over again, will you do it with experience? No. Will you do it with your skill and cunning and your expertise? No. Will you do it with your charisma, your good BS? No. What's it going to be? Why you're going to be successful? Your principles, in combination with those other things, and your values. Because all of that determines your character. And even bad people, I've worked for some bad owners that I didn't want to work for anymore, but even they recognize good principles, good character, and they want those type of people doing their jobs, even if they're not like that. Time and time again over the last 42 years, we have, as a contractor, gone into an interview with a Fortune 500 company. There may be 10 or 15 strangers, and we have the same amount of time that I'm having with you this morning. That period of time, usually 45 to maybe 50 minutes, to convince them to hire our company, and there's 4 of my competitors out in the lobby waiting for their turn. Now, we're all experienced, we're all really good builders, we all have good BS and some charisma, so that we're all the same. How do we differentiate between each other? Somehow, you must communicate and articulate your values, your principles, tell some stories about, here's what I did when this happened on this particular project, okay? So that they get an idea of what your character is, who you are. Very important. Inevitably, when we get awarded a job and we get more than our share of projects, when we get a chance to interview, they will call me and say, Jim, congratulations, we awarded your company the project. And I say, well, thank you, we're ready to go. Our team is really excited, and we're going to do you a good job. And then I say, why did you select us? And inevitably, in some form of words, and it's always a little different, they say, because we just felt like we could trust your team. Why did they say that? Because somehow in that 45 minutes, we became trustworthy by the things we communicated to them and articulated. And it wasn't about, look at all our pretty projects and look at all of our experience. It was stories about those projects and what we did and how we treated people and what happened. That's what wins it over. If you want to learn about principles and values, a little more about it, and study and think about it, cogitate about it, Stephen Covey and John Maxwell have put out a lot of books on it, and I'd recommend you get a hold of some of them and study. And I guess one of the last things I want to talk to you about is tell you what you're entitled to when you get this ring and you get your degree and you leave Texas A&M. What do you think you're entitled to? Nothing, except your thoughts, your hopes, your dreams, and as a little extra bonus, because you're here, you have access to the Aggie network, which most folks don't. Well, I think you can tell if you want to be successful in your career and your personal life, you've got to get these principles and values squared away. I know you're all smart kids, and you will learn how to design one way or another. And when you're wildly successful, and I'm sure you will be, guess who the most surprised person in the world will be? Your mother-in-law. I know. In your case, your future mother-in-law. So, I'm done. I hope you have some questions for me. Did anybody know how to do the egg? Okay, good. I was worried that you guys were so smart and way ahead of me, you'd already know how to do that. It's a good trick you can pull on your buddies.
So some questions. And when you ask a question, if you could give your name first, it's an opportunity to get your name out there.
Don't be afraid to ask me a question. I've got kids and grandkids your age.
My name is Dalton Low, and I'm curious, other than architecture and construction science, what other fields would be important to get into?
Would be what?
Important to get into.
Important?
Other than construction science and architecture, like business, engineering, what things would be important to get into?
Okay. As far as your education?
Yeah.
Okay. I think if I did it all over again, and I don't have any really big regrets, to tell you the truth, I've been really blessed, but I would maybe get an MBA or something like that in addition to my construction degree, just to make sure that I understand business really well. Because if you want to end up being in charge, you need to understand how to run a company, and knowing how to build is not the same thing as running a company, okay? So business part of it would be, when I look at resumes, and I don't do it so much anymore, my two sons are running my company now. And when they look at resumes, they look at, okay, here's the technical part, where's the well-rounded part, where's the other part? If you got some business degree or courses as well, and you're doing other things, extracurricular activities and all that. And by the way, one of my sons just got back from a recruiting trip to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma and TCU, and he's going to come to A&M as well. But my advice, and you can say, hey, you're an old guy and you don't know, don't wear your flip-flops and your shorts and your t-shirt to an interview with the president of a construction company who's thinking about hiring you. You just get a big X, okay? You got to show more respect than that. And I don't mind y'all wearing what you're doing today. I know that's the way it works. But when you go to interview with a company, you need to be looking your best, okay? Just like when you go to church, hopefully. So, Nick, anybody? That's a good question. Any others? Yes, sir.
Howdy, I'm Logan Whitley. So if I walked into an interview with you, is there any like one thing I could say or do to I guess convince you to hire me or trust me as an intern?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably, I like to put you on the spot and make you stress a little bit, okay, to see what you're like under pressure, because you find out a lot about people. And if you have thought about it a lot, about what is important to you and the way you conduct yourself, you'll be able to tell me. I'll ask you, why do you want this job? Well, because I got to make a living? No, there's more reasons than that, okay? So I'm going to ask you questions like, why do you want this job? And where do you see yourself in 5 years? I want you to have thought about, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to start off here because I think I want to be a project manager in 5 years or something. Give me something that makes me think, you know, you have thought about your career. You're thinking ahead a little bit. You know about the story I told you about getting ahead of the airplane? You're not a good pilot if you're not way ahead of the airplane. Because you have to, if the engine blows or something, you catch on fire, you got to be able to calmly deal with it at that point and not be way back here. It's the same thing, okay? But be calm and be humble, okay? I've interviewed some people before, and I want you to look sharp and sit up straight and talk to me and look at me, okay? Not this kind of stuff like this. And by the way, the techniques that we use when we go to interviews and we communicate and articulate, we are looking at people right in their eyeballs, okay? And I'm looking at the little girl on the end who's maybe taking all the notes, and she's the least one, and maybe a guy, okay? I'm looking at her too. She may be the one making the decision, you don't know. And also, you didn't ask this, people are looking at, staring at the ceiling like they're bored. They may be listening more than the guy or the lady who's looking straight at you. So don't ever stop doing your thing when you are proposing, okay? Next. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Karina Burke. My question is, to what extent do architects need to understand like systems and materials and like the construction side of things?
Well, you're going to understand your materials because you're going to learn all about what materials ought to be used on the exterior and the interior and what are good for this and that. So you'll know that. The thing that will, means and methods, have you studied that yet? That's something that's the responsibility of the contractor. We're the ones, you draw the building, we got to figure out how to build it. That's the sort of the means and methods, and you're not responsible for that. But the more that you can understand about how things work, the more you can help us, okay, as contractors, if you're more educated about what we do. And if you can have an attitude of, instead of, I got my drawings done, I'm done with this thing. They got to go build it. It doesn't work that way, and Mr. Adams can tell you that. It's a team effort. Many years ago, 40 years ago when I first broke into business, there's a little bit of button heads, okay? They sit over there, we sit over here, and that's not the way we do it now. We get together, and it's a team effort. Even though you're the architect, I'm the contractor, we sit down arm in arm and figure it out. And you help me with things that I don't understand, and I do the same with you. So if you can, once you get your part of it figured out, if you can study a little bit more about the construction, you'll be a stronger architect because of it.
My name is Madison, and I guess my question is, we all kind of have the thought of, okay, we have to work as hard as we can in school, we have to do all this, so all of our resumes have parts that are strong and parts that aren't strong. But how important would you say the resume is compared to the interview when you come in for an internship or for a job? Or
Well, it's important. I mean, my son was telling me he had resumes and he's looked at the ones that misspell words and punctuation's not right. He just throws them away. That person never even gets a chance. And they may be good, but if they can't take the time and, you know, do something besides hope spell check gets it, okay? That's not paying attention to detail. And you must, in this business, pay attention to detail. It's important, okay? All these little bitty things, the small things are important. Buildings don't get built and they don't work right unless the architect pays attention to detail and we pay attention to detail. Just like flying an airplane. If you don't do little bitty things, you're going down, okay? So the resume is very important, and that's not hard to do, to prepare a resume that is at least grammatically correct. And as far as content of the resume, I like to see well-rounded, as far as contracting, I like to see well-rounded resumes where you're doing something besides just going to class and screwing around, okay? Are you a member of the so-and-so club? Did you have a position in this organization? I can see that you're out learning to talk to people, learning to influence people, okay? That's what's really important, that will make you a well-rounded employee. If you're just someone that's really technically really sound, we can't use you. We communicate with 30 subcontractors on every project, 25 to 30 subcontractors. Imagine all the different characters that you're going to run across, and you've got to be a magician as far as motivating those people, and when something goes wrong, to work it out. You've got to be a good communicator, okay? And I'm talking about contractors, but the same thing with architects, okay? You want to be the best. What else you got? No question is a stupid question. I've asked a lot of stupid questions before. So. You got a stupid question? All right.
My name is Caitlin Markham, and my question is, do you have a certain type of method or way that you communicate with a difficult client that's hard to work with?
Well, there's not a way, and I have some clients are just, you need to get away from them. There's some people that don't listen. They don't want to work things out. They're just bad folks, and you run into them every once in a while. And we fire clients. We fire customers basically once we get done with the job, and they don't act right, and they don't have any principles and values and character. We don't want to mess with them. But if you somehow can sit down with them, and you know, if you go to lunch with somebody, it kind of breaks down the barriers, okay? That's a good venue for just, when you break bread with somebody, everybody relaxes a little bit. You talk about things other than just the work. Talk about your kids, or you talk about your football team or something, and you establish a relationship. If you can ever figure out how to at least start some sort of a relationship with each person that you're working with, the good ones and the bad ones, and they believe that you are pretty good folks, okay, that you want to do right. Most people want you to, they want to help you to succeed, okay? They don't want you to fail. So, but the bad ones, you just got, sometimes you have to bite your tongue, okay, and go on. But just keep trying, and then you got to make a decision later on whether you're going to mess with them again. Some people, life's a little short. Some people aren't worth fooling with. So, y'all are old enough to know good from bad, right from wrong, okay? Get that compass pointed in the right direction. You know what good behavior is. And you're going to see 69-year-olds act like knuckleheads sometimes, okay? It's unacceptable. And you wonder, why does he act like that? Well, he's been acting that way for 69 years. That's why he acts that way, okay? But he's a knucklehead for doing it. Doesn't make it right. What else?
I got another question.
Okay.
My name's still Madison. What are some of the ways that you motivate your employees in a positive manner, like, and deal with issues that come up with them, things like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I had, over the years, I worked for 3 contractors before I was able to start my own company. And I learned as much from the ones who didn't do things right as the ones who did it the right way. I saw people mistreat employees, I thought, why are they doing that? That's stupid. That guy or that gal's going to quit, or they're going to not do their best, or whatever. And so I began to realize how important the people were. You know what? The most important thing in my company is not my customers. It's my employees. I'm more dedicated to them than any customer, okay? And the way I motivate them is to be a good example myself, okay? Not only at the office, but away from the office. They know what I'm doing. The word gets around, whether you're doing good things or not, or whether you're running around on your wife, or whether you're drinking and making an ass out of yourself, that gets around. And you're not respected when that stuff happens, okay? So you got to lead a good life, okay? And your compass has got to be pointed in the right direction, and people will respect you. But so I tried to do that, be a good example, but also I check in on them, and I say, how's it going? I try to talk to them. I don't do it so much anymore because I'm not the president of the company anymore. My son is. He's doing it. I trained him to do it. But I would check in with everybody in the office, and then I would go out to, and that's project managers and estimators, and like, hey, how's it going? Got any problems I can help you with? They know, even if they don't have anything, or even if they got something, but they want to handle it, the fact that the owner of the company, or the president, or the vice president, whatever you are, cares enough to check in on you and say, hey, can I help? What can I do to make things better for you? Boy, you feel really good as an employee. And then go out to the job site, and as architects, I forgot to tell you this, don't stay in your office or on the plan table or on the CAD machine or whatever. Get out to that job site, meet that superintendent, meet some of the other men out there and women who work in construction, and see what they do, and show some respect to them, and they'll do the same thing for you, okay? Get out of the office and get out there where the concrete and the dust is flying. But basically, to complete the answer to your question, just treat people with respect, but set a very high example of, okay, here's what we want from everyone. This is where we want to be. We want to be the best. I had a rating system. It's kind of funny. I don't know if I can remember it. It was 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 1 was exemplary. Number 2 was good. And number 3 was average. And number 4 was please fire me. And so I ranked. I had that ranking system on the chalkboard every time we had a company meeting. And every once in a while we had some 4s that we had to deal with, and they weren't there, of course. But anyway, just good, sound, personal behavior to start off with, and then try to encourage the people that work for you.
One more question?
Yes, sir.
My name is Byron Campos. What are some of the mistakes that you've made that made you grow as an owner, as a non-owner, or made you think differently and made you more successful, or just shift the way you think?
Ooh, wow. Reason I'm thinking is because I've made a lot of them, but you when you stumble over your mistakes, you learn a hell of a lot from it. And I've made errors out in the field that cost the company money, doing something that didn't work out. But I mean, I'll specifically, you lay awake at night as a contractor sometimes. You've got a 500-yard pour the next day and the weather's marginal. I've sometimes decided to call the pour off and the sun shined, and then other times I've said to heck with it, let's go, and then it rained, things like that. But and you can't, a raindrop finish doesn't pass muster when the architect comes out and looks at it. But probably early in my career, I was a little more harsh on people. That I've mellowed out a little bit with age and gotten more mature. I would, as I told my kids, I was 23 or 4 when my started having kids, I was a better father at 45 or 50 after they were gone than I was when I was in my 30s, okay? Just maturity. And I started my company, I was around 30 years old, somewhere around 32. And I was a little too harsh and with some people, and probably didn't motivate them or show enough concern for them like I should have. You know, I think that's something I learned. You guys have an advantage over a lot of other kids at other universities because of this, what we've been talking about, the saving network. It's a wonderful thing. But when you get out there, you're not going to be given anything. You're going to have to earn it. Okay? You may open some doors a little quicker and a little easier than maybe some kids from somewhere else, because there's so many Aggies out there in construction and in architecture. But you will have to prove yourself. Okay? So work hard, and you'll have a great career, but make sure that compass is squared away. Okay? Pointing in the right direction, or you're going to fail.
Thanks, that's a great way to finish up, talking about how to succeed there. So, I don't know, did you want to add anything, Harold? Or,
Well, I can tell you as an architect.
you're going to come talk to us, right?
Okay, right.
I'm a session, so.
I'll have a chance, I think, sometime to meet with you, but as an architect, what Jim is saying, I couldn't agree with more. It's all about cooperation. It's building respect on the part of everyone on the team. And I can tell you little side stories along the way that will reinforce everything that he's told you. To get a good project, you're working well with everyone and you're respecting everyone on the job. So I commend you for your talk. It's right on.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks. Let's give a round of applause.